Does your mind feel like it's running a million miles a minute? Are you jumping to conclusions? Are you making decisions based purely on emotion without taking the time to think them through? Do you feel out of control of your emotions at times? This week, in part 4 of the Emotional Fitness series, we are going to be focused on slowing down and reframing our mindset. We're going to be focusing on 3 topics today: training patience, emotional endurance, and building long-term optimism without toxic positivity. Okay? Let's get into it. Welcome to the Mindset Gym podcast, where we exercise your way of thinking to help unlock your hidden potential. I'm your host, Emily Irwin, a registered nurse and holistic nutritionist with a passion for all things health, fitness, and personal development. All right, let's get into it. Hi guys, welcome back to the Mindset Gym podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We are at part 4 of the Emotional Fitness series. And this week is our quote-unquote cardio endurance kind of section of the series. And the focuses of today are training patience, emotional endurance, and building long-term optimism without toxic positivity. The focus of today is to not let our emotions kind of get the best of us and make our brain kind of like a runaway train. It's going to be learning how to reframe our mindset so that you feel like you are in better control of your emotions instead of them controlling you and forcing you to take actions that maybe you don't feel super great about after the fact. So we're going to dive right into the first topic, which is training patience. And I think this is something that a lot of us struggle with. We all want the progress. We all want to do the next big thing. We all want to check those things off of our to-do list. And oftentimes we either underestimate or we don't want to put in the time to actually get the outcomes that we're looking for. We live in a world, I've talked about this before, where we are so used to a very fast-paced, very get what you want when you want it, no questions asked kind of space. And it's not an environment that is very conducive to training patience, because you don't have to be super patient. You can get things very quickly. There's a lot of sources of instant gratification. It's very easy for you to not have to implement patience in your day-to-day life. And so this is a skill that, if we don't use it, we lose it. And it becomes much more difficult for us to actually be patient in the situations where we need to be. And so when something tests our patience, it starts to bring up a lot of feelings of stress and anger and frustration and overwhelm. And instead of having the skill set to know how to sit in that discomfort and just be patient when we need to be, we just want those bad feelings to go away. And so we start acting out of impulse and we start acting out of this desire to just remedy the way that we're currently feeling. Training patience is not about doing nothing when you're in a situation that forces you to be patient. It's not about, taking no action at all. It's about having the ability to stay calm and collected and really think through the actions that you're taking in those moments where you're forced to be patient. So I'm going to walk you through 5 simple tips to help you train patience in your day-to-day life so that when you're forced with a situation where you need to be patient, you are better equipped to do so, and those emotions are not going to get the best of you the way that they originally would. So the first thing that you can do to start training patience is practicing micro delays. And the way that you do this is that you start to insert little delays in your schedule. So this could look like waiting 30 seconds before picking up your phone, or pouring yourself a cup of coffee in the morning and waiting a couple minutes before you drink it. Or somebody texts you and you feel that kind of instant urge to text them back immediately. Wait a few minutes. Maybe you're like me. Here's kind of a small example that I do constantly that I think is a nice way to kind of practice this. Let's say you are someone who's running a bath and you jump into it before the bathtub's actually full. Give yourself a few minutes and wait for it to actually fill up. Don't jump into it halfway through. Or let's say you are wanting to grab a snack out of your fridge. Wait a few minutes. Reevaluate how you feel, and if you still want it then, go get it. But it's just taking that small moment and forcing yourself to pause and sit in the discomfort for a minute before you take action. Doing this repeatedly will strengthen our impulse control and will help rewire your brain to tolerate that discomfort so that when you feel it in another situation, you won't feel as much of this panic feeling to just get rid of it. It's going to feel a lot more familiar for you to sit in it and take a beat before you take action. The next thing that I want you to do is reframe your mindset around having to be patient. When you are in a situation that forces you to wait and be patient for any given outcome, instead of thinking of it as waiting, I want you to think of it as training. I want you to think of this like a mental workout. You are training your brain to get better at this skill. So when you're forced into situations where you have to wait, treat it like training. Treat it like strengthening your mind. This simple mindset shift allows us to look at it as something a lot more productive and beneficial for us and can help eliminate a little bit of that frustration and overwhelm about it. Number 3, breathe before reacting. When something frustrates or irritates you, take a breath before responding. Just that one moment of making your breath the first thing versus you just immediately responding with whatever comes to your head based on the emotions you're feeling gives you that small window of pause to settle down a little bit and reframe the way that you want to approach things. Jefferson Fisher, in his book, The Next Conversation, talks about things like this. He talks about a couple of examples for, better communicating in conversation. And some of the things he brings up is implementing a short pause before responding or having your breath be your first word. So when you go to respond in a stressful situation, he talks about some examples of people he was helping as a lawyer who were having to answer questions in court. And the opposing lawyer was coming at them with questions and trying to aggravate them and trying to trigger a really emotional response. He would train the people he worked with to make their breath be their first word. And so instead of just immediately responding and panicking and trying to rush through this uncomfortable thing to make it go away, these people knew to take a deep breath, let that be the first word, and gather themselves before they respond. Same thing with taking a short pause. Jefferson Fisher describes a short pause as anything from 1 to 4 seconds. So just taking that, short pause before you respond to something that's really emotionally triggering. It just gives you that little space to gather yourself and ground yourself and respond in a way that you are actually proud of instead of just reacting out of emotion. Because I think a lot of times when we're faced with really emotionally charged conversations or things that trigger a lot of really difficult emotions for us, we just want that to go away. And so our instinct is to just answer as quickly as possible and just, word vomit onto the other person to make it end and to get that uncomfortable conversation over with, which oftentimes is going to lead to you not communicating yourself very well and maybe saying things that you don't want to say and taking the conversation in a direction that maybe it really didn't need to go in. And so there is so much value in just taking a moment to breathe and pause before you respond in those difficult situations. Number 4, focus on the long-term vision. This relates to long-term goals that you are working towards. Maybe you have a fitness goal that you're trying to achieve. Maybe you have a business goal that you're trying to achieve. Maybe you have a new project that you're trying to launch. Maybe there's a job that you're wanting to go after. Maybe you have just started a program in school for something that you're wanting to achieve. Write down what your long-term vision is, and whenever you start to feel restless and impatient, revisit it. Revisit that long-term vision and revisit that why that got you into doing this action in the first place. Because this can help give you that sense that you are on the right track, you don't have to rush through things, and it can kind of re-spark that fire in you when it feels like things are moving way too slowly or not moving the way that you want them to. Having that time to sit down and say, okay, this is what I'm working towards, this is why I'm doing it, can kind of reignite that motivation and make it a little bit easier for you to be patient and work through the process, because chances are whatever it is you're working towards is going to take a lot longer than you may initially think. Any big goal, any big important thing worth achieving in this life is not an overnight thing. It is not going to come instantly. It's not going to come as a result from you just putting in 5 minutes of work and hoping for the best. That's not how it works. You have to keep showing up and keep doing the thing over the long term. And so practicing patience could not be more important than it is in these situations, because if you don't have patience and you start to feel that discomfort, there's a lot of people that will just wipe their hands with what they're doing and quit, because that is the easiest way to get rid of that discomfort and feel that instant sense of relief, because now that grind is no longer there. There's no discomfort. But you also will never reach your goal. So keep in mind your long-term vision and keep this kind of top of mind as you work towards things. Number 5 is reflect on past progress. And there's 2 parts to this that I want to get into. Number 1, reflect on previous times where you have been forced to be patient, and reflect on how things ended up working out anyways, despite the uncomfortable feelings that you may have felt at the time. You reflecting on these kinds of situations reinforces the narrative that things will work out and that you are capable of being patient. The second part to this is I also want you to reflect on the past version of yourself. And this relates a little bit more to when you're working towards a long-term goal, something that's going to force you to keep showing up again and again over the long term. An area where I found this incredibly helpful was throughout my fitness journey. And the reason that we do this and take the time to reflect on where you were, 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and compare that version of you to the version of you that you are now, gives you more perspective because you're with yourself every day. You are in your own body, experiencing your own experiences, experiencing the kind of slow grinding process that takes place day to day. And any change that's actually taking place as a result of the work that you're doing is small and gradual, and you are there, you're in it all the time. And so it's really hard for you to actually appreciate the progress that you've made. And so taking a moment to reflect on a previous version of yourself allows you that time to really concretely say, oh my God, look how much progress I've actually made from this point to this point. All of this progress that I maybe wasn't even paying any attention to, progress that I didn't even think I had made. And so this is why, something like this has been so helpful in my journey with fitness, is because I'm with myself every day. I am there every day when I go into the gym. And so any changes that are happening to my body, to the way that I lift, to my form, to the weight I'm able to do, it's all so gradual that there's never one day where I go in there and I do something and it's like, oh my God, this is drastically different than yesterday. It's not. It's all kind of a very slow incremental process. So it's very hard sometimes for me to feel like I've gone anywhere until I take the time to actually look at a previous version of myself, and I can much more easily appreciate my progress. And part of the reason that I like to do this, and part of the reason I recommend you do this as it relates to your own goals, is because having that moment to appreciate how far you've come and really see in very concrete terms the progress that you've made reignites that motivation and makes it way easier for you to be patient and just trust the process, because you now have proof that you being patient this entire time and continuing to put in the work is paying off. It is making you go somewhere. And so it just reinforces the narrative that the discomfort and the patience that you're having to put in now is resulting in long-term benefit. Those are just 5 kind of quick, simple ways that we can train patience in our everyday life, because I'm gonna say it again, just like everything else we've talked about in this series, patience is a skill that you can train. It is something you can improve on over time. And so you implementing these small strategies into your day-to-day life is going to make it a lot easier for you to manage being patient and for you to take on those uncomfortable feelings and not let them get the best of you and not let them force you to react in a way that you don't really want to. All right, I'm going to move into our second topic, which is emotional endurance. And emotional endurance kind of goes hand in hand with patience. So emotional endurance is kind of that ability to stay calm, composed, and grounded when you're going through really difficult situations. So you might be hearing that and thinking, that sounds kind of familiar based on our discussion about patience, because the discomfort you feel when you're forced to be patient falls under that kind of umbrella of really uncomfortable emotions that we require emotional endurance to sit in. And so while patience kind of falls under the emotional endurance umbrella, it is not the entire thing. Emotional endurance kind of covers every category of uncomfortable feelings. So whether you're feeling impatient, whether you're lacking confidence in yourself, whether you're feeling like you're not capable of doing the thing that you want to do, whether you're feeling embarrassed or scared or mad or upset or betrayed or anxious or overwhelmed, emotional endurance is about your ability to sit in those feelings. Similarly to the discussion we just had about how, training patience can help you with long-term goals, training emotional endurance can as well. Having that ability to just sit in uncomfortable emotions, period, can help you show up in the ways that you really want to show up, even when your emotions are making it really difficult for you to do so. Maybe you're in a situation like we talked about where you're going after a really long-term goal and you've lost motivation. It's taking way longer than you thought it would. You don't feel like you're getting anywhere. You don't feel like you're getting any better. And you want to quit because it feels really hard and it feels really uncomfortable. Maybe you just went through a breakup and you are feeling really hurt and feeling really broken, and all you're wanting to do is go and Maybe it's fix things with your partner. Maybe it's ream them out and say a bunch of really mean, hurtful things that you would never say otherwise, because you have all these negative, uncomfortable emotions that you just want to get rid of. And you're looking for a very quick fix to just relieve this uncomfortable feeling that you have. And so this may lead you to go, track down your ex and do some things that maybe you aren't super proud of. Maybe you made a post on social media and it's not performing as well as you thought it would, and you're starting to feel that discomfort bubble up. You're starting to feel that anxiety that you don't know what you're doing, that you're not good enough, that the post you made wasn't good enough. And so you may want to just go and delete it in order to immediately relieve those uncomfortable feelings. Emotional endurance is the thing that's going to allow us to pause in all of these situations. It is the ability to take on that discomfort and take on those uncomfortable feelings and not immediately seek relief. And this is one of those things that I think has a lot of parallels to our physical fitness. If you are taking on any sort of physical fitness endeavor, maybe you're doing really long stints of cardio, and in order for you to accomplish that, maybe you're trying to start running and it's something that you've never done before and it's forcing you to, go out and run for longer periods of time. In order for you to accomplish that, you have to be willing to sit in the discomfort. You have to be willing to just be in the thick of it and not immediately seek out some sort of action like stopping that will make the discomfort go away. It's the ability to sit in it and move through it and keep taking the actions that you know you need to take, even with those uncomfortable feelings, all right? It's that ability to just kind of pick them up and take them along for the ride. And that is going to be one of the biggest keys to you succeeding in anything, because there's so many situations that are going to trigger really uncomfortable emotions. And your ability to stay the course and do the things that you need to do regardless is going to get you very far. There's a quote from Viktor E. Frankl that he had in Man's Search for Meaning that kind of relates to this topic that I really like. And he said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." And this kind of really nicely illustrates that emotional regulation piece that comes into play when you practice emotional endurance. It's having the ability to choose the way that you respond and choose the way that you show up instead of just letting your emotions kind of come and take you for a ride. John Kabat-Zinn, founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction, once said, "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." So I'm going to walk you through 3 simple things that you can do to help train emotional endurance. Number 1 is practicing micro discomfort daily. And this sounds a little bit similar to the first tip for practicing patience, which is kind of implementing those micro pauses where you're kind of putting in like 30-second blocks, 30-second pauses before you do something that you're wanting to do. This is kind of similar, except there is more ways that you can implement this. And practicing micro discomfort is kind of your way of inserting small areas of discomfort into your day so that you can practice sitting in it and you can practice tolerating it. Examples of this can include forcing yourself to have a tough conversation that you've been avoiding, sitting in silence instead of scrolling on your phone, finishing a workout instead of quitting early because it feels really hard, forcing yourself to follow through on those really difficult things instead of giving yourself the immediate out. Instead of taking the action that is going to immediately remedy those difficult feelings, force yourself to finish them. Force yourself to do the hard things, even though they don't feel the best, because you having those kind of micro moments is going to train your brain to be more okay with that discomfort. Studies on exposure training and resilience show that controlled stress exposure increases emotional regulation and adaptability over time. Like I've said before, this is something you can practice. It's easier to implement those kind of smaller doses of difficult things into our day because then you can gradually learn how to get better at it. You don't have to learn this skill in the thick of something really awful, in the thick of something really, really big, because that's a really hard time for you to learn a skill like this. And oftentimes you don't because it's too hard. If it's not something you've been practicing ahead of time and suddenly you're faced with a situation that is extremely emotionally charged, you're not going to have the skill set because you haven't practiced it in simpler situations. And so what will happen is your emotions will take over. The next thing we can do is make a conscious effort to name our feelings instead of trying to numb them. I think oftentimes when we're faced with difficult emotions, our actions are ones that are taken to try and numb out those feelings because, like I said before, we want that kind of immediate relief. We want those difficult things to go away. So instead of focusing on taking productive steps and actually doing the things that we want to do, our actions can very easily become focused on just getting rid of that feeling. And so that can lead to things like doom scrolling for hours, or getting drunk, or doing drugs, or binge eating food. Any of these instant gratification comfort measures that are going to completely numb out and distract from the way that you're feeling, it becomes very easy for us to just lean into those instead of actually taking time to sit in our emotions. So again, this is a practice. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you take a little bit of time to try and name your emotions and try and sit in them and you still end up taking actions later to numb them out, that's okay. Give yourself grace as you're doing this process, because it's not something you're going to be perfect at right away. It's not something you need to be perfect at right away. This is something you gradually practice and something you gradually get a little bit better at. But next time you're feeling really uncomfortable emotions, just take a minute and try and name them and try and just sit in it for a little bit and fully immerse yourself in what it feels like to feel the way that you're feeling instead of just trying to push it away. The last thing I want you to do is I want you to implement some sort of recovery ritual after you're faced with really difficult situations and really difficult emotions. Create simple, repeatable habits that you can go to as a way to kind of bring yourself down after you've been faced with really difficult situations. These can include things like meditation, journaling, going for a walk, having a nice bath, calling a friend, calling a parent if that's an option. Maybe spending time with a pet, maybe it's listening to your favorite music. Just something that you can consistently go to help bring you down to a more calm state of mind. Having this consistent ritual can make it easier for you to sit in the discomfort because you have a consistent way to turn it off. You have a consistent signal that says to your brain, okay, hard thing is over, time to decompress, time to turn it off. And so you don't have to sit in these uncomfortable feelings forever. Because I think sometimes when we force ourselves to sit in really uncomfortable feelings and we force ourselves to just like be in the thick of a really uncomfortable situation, it can feel like it's never ending. It can feel like it is just this endless spiral of shit that you just don't want to be in the middle of. And knowing that you have this kind of decompression ritual in your back pocket can make it feel a little safer to lean into the discomfort because you know you have an endpoint. You know you have something to signal to your brain, okay, turn it off. And the nice thing about this is that the more you implement it, if you have one set ritual of things that you do every time to kind of decompress, your brain is going to learn that that is the signal. Your brain will start to adapt to the fact that whenever you take this action, it's time to bring your emotions down. And so it will become a little bit easier for you to have a concrete endpoint and bring yourself down from the way that you're feeling. Our last topic today is building long-term optimism without toxic positivity. And some of the things that you can do in order to help cater to this will actually help with the previous two topics. Because if you are able to create a mindset of optimism without it being kind of this toxic positivity mindset, it can actually help you through really difficult situations because you're not putting a untrue blanket statement of everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine on top of a really difficult situation. You are actually building a constructive mindset to make the hard thing feel easier to move through. So what is toxic positivity? Toxic positivity is kind of this notion that we need to look on the bright side at all costs, even when things are genuinely really difficult. It's that pressure to pretend that bad things are not happening and acting like they don't exist in order to just create this all positive all the time kind of facade. And alongside this being just incredibly annoying, it can be pretty damaging. Toxic positivity blocks emotional processing, cuts off true emotional connection, and it invalidates our feelings. Having this kind of idea or putting this idea on other people that everything's okay, everything's fine, look on the bright side, like it could always be worse, it could always be this, like focus on the things you do have. It invalidates the feelings that people are having in situations that are truly difficult. People don't have to feel 100% positive and 100% happy all the time, and there is no need to shame people for that. Toxic positivity kind of inserts this aura of shame for how you're feeling, even though your feelings are a mentally healthy response to a difficult situation. And if you are someone who puts this kind of toxic positivity on yourself and doesn't allow yourself to feel the difficult feelings that you need to feel, it can block emotional processing because you can't properly process feelings that you are actively trying to ignore. And it creates this block where we can't truly connect with other people and we can't truly connect with ourselves because we're not really being honest. We're not really admitting to ourselves or to others the way that we're feeling. We're just trying to cover it all up and say, everything's fine, I'm okay, it's all good. when in reality, that's not truly how you feel. Research from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that suppressing your emotions increases stress and reduces psychological well-being. And so it may feel like you're doing something beneficial by trying to shove all the hard stuff aside and just pretend that things are okay, but you're actually damaging your psychological well-being by ignoring the way that things actually are and trying to bullshit yourself into thinking that things are completely okay when they're not. So how can we cultivate a mindset that is optimistic but not toxically positive? Because there is a way to do this. Even when you are in the thick of something really difficult, there is a way to look at it through an optimistic lens without denying the difficulty of what it is, without suppressing the emotions that you are meant to feel. There are ways that you can look at it that can help you have a more optimistic outlook without denying the way that you are feeling. Having an optimistic mindset is not about denying your reality, it's about looking at it with a different perspective. It's this balance between recognizing that things are really hard, but also believing that you have the strength and ability to move through it. Toxic positivity kind of says, everything's fine, everything's good, positive vibes only, whereas having an optimistic mindset says, you know what? This is actually really hard, but it won't break me. I have the ability to solve it. So I'm gonna walk you through a few more simple strategies to help you implement an optimistic mindset without toxic positivity. The first one is practicing emotional honesty. Be willing to truly name your emotions without labeling them as good or bad. There are not feelings that are good for you to feel and bad for you to feel. You having different emotions based on different situations is the emotionally healthy response. You're not going to have positive, happy emotions to every situation in your life. That's just not how it works. So when you are faced with different feelings about different situations, be willing to take the time to just name them, acknowledge them, and sit in them. And don't label them as something that's good or bad or something that is acceptable or needs to be shoved away and numbed and suppressed. It seems like such a simple thing, just putting a name to the way that you're feeling, but it really does have a lot of benefit. Research shows that emotional labeling reduces the intensity of the feelings that you're having and can help promote better emotional regulation. It's easier for us to take on hard emotions and manage them in a productive way when we have a concrete understanding of what it is that we're facing. Number 2 is reframe, don't deny. When something goes wrong, acknowledge what's happening, acknowledge how you're feeling. Start to look for things that you can control or things that you can learn. Reframe it as a lesson, reframe it as something that you can grow through. Don't deny the reality of what is actually going on. An example of this, let's say something really difficult happens and you're kind of trying to shove it under the rug. A kind of toxic positivity saying could be, it is what it is, everything happens for a reason, let's focus on the bright side. Right? That kind of denies the reality of what is going on, and it doesn't give you any productive steps to actually take action. It just tries to paint a reality in which the difficult thing you're going through isn't real, but it is real. And so instead, reframe it. Look for the lessons in the thick of what is going on. Look for ways that you can grow from the situation, because that doesn't deny what's actually going on, but it allows you a different avenue to look at it through. It gives you a different lens where you kind of create this reality where the situation's still hard. The hard thing is still happening, but there's opportunity and there are things that you can do to make it better and to make it a little bit easier to take on instead of just ignoring that it exists in the first place. Number 3 is surround yourself with realistic voices. If you are someone who is trying to cultivate a mindset that is optimistic without toxic positivity, surround yourself with people who speak in a similar way. Surround yourself with people that are going to give you that balance of support and honesty. They're not going to just sugarcoat everything that they want to say to you. They're not going to avoid giving you advice because they don't want to hurt your feelings. They're going to tell you the way that things are. They're going to encourage you, but they're not going to invalidate your feelings. And the last one that we can do, and this is something that I think I actually talked about in the previous episode, is developing a both and mindset. This is that mindset where two things can be true at once. Instead of having that black and white thinking, things are either okay or they're not, things are either positive or they're not. Having that kind of both and mentality allows you to take on a situation and say something like, this is really hard and really difficult, and I'm capable of handling it. I made this really big mistake, and I'm capable of learning from it and coming back better. I said this thing to a friend that I don't feel really good about, and capable of going to them and explaining myself and trying to do better next time. It eliminates this black and white mentality where if something is wrong, it's all wrong. There is no good in it, and if something is good, it's all good and there's no bad in it, because a completely binary way of thinking invalidates a lot of feelings, because life is not black and white. Things are not all good or all bad, and there's no middle ground in between them. It's all middle ground. It's all gray. There is such a wild, vast mix of emotions that we're going to feel, and such a diverse array of situations we're going to be in. So accept the duality of them. Accept that things can be good and bad. Accept that things can be hard, but manageable. And that creates a situation when you're faced with something really hard that you can feel the pain of what is going on and still feel hope that things will get better. So these are just some simple shifts that you can have to reframe your mindset and make it easier to cultivate optimism without invalidating the way that you feel, without ignoring the reality of what life really is. All right, we have come to the end of part 4 of the Emotional Fitness series. Next week, we're going to be getting into our final segment of the Emotional Fitness series, the Advanced Training section. In that episode, we're going to be talking about turning vulnerability into a superpower and managing conflict. And then at the end of the episode, I'm going to be taking everything that we have covered over the entire 5-part series and put together a plan for you to design your own emotional fitness routine. We're going to be breaking down all the key takeaways from all of these episodes. So if you're ever wanting to come back to this and put together a routine of your own, but you're not wanting to listen to 5 weeks worth of episodes, you have a quick breakdown of all the most important parts. All right? Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next week. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you like the episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, or share the show with a friend. Your support helps the show reach even more incredible people just like you. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time at the Mindset Gym.